Welcome to my tales of the paranormal. Hello again, folks, and welcome back. Thought I'd share some more stories with you about the paranormal and supernatural, particularly experiences that have occurred. Now, this one goes way back. I must have been about 4, maybe 5 at the time. We lived in a farmhouse, and I remember there were fields all around us and a pear tree, and I remember that the house was white, but beyond that, I don't recall much. There was one night, though, that particularly stands out in my mind. I remember laying in bed, being unable to sleep, and rolling over and facing towards my doorway. Now, I don't recall if my bedroom didn't have a door or if the door was just open, but either way, I could see into the hallway. Now, one direction of the hall went towards the kitchen. The other direction went towards my parents' room. And I remember seeing a pale figure in what looked like a white nightgown walk from the direction of my parents' room towards where the kitchen and dining room areas were. Thinking my mother was up and about, I decided to get up. And I left my bed, went into the hall, made the right-hand turn, and went right into where I believe it was the kitchen. I think the hallway was off the kitchen. That part's irrelevant. Anyway, I went in there, but there was nobody. Nobody about, no lights on. I began to get spooked and quickly made my way back down the other end of the hall to my parents' room. I carefully and slowly cracked open their door and looked in to see both my parents fast asleep in their bed. Neither of them had been up. I wasn't sure what I had actually seen, but was quite terrified. So I ran back into my room and pulled the blankets over my head and waited for morning. Now, I should also say that my siblings and I all shared a room at this time. So none of them could have been up and about without me having seen them get up, and none of them were the size of adults anyway. I don't recall the conversation with my parents about this. And as far as I know, there were no other incidents that occurred, at least not to my knowledge. This next story takes place years later. At this time, I'm a young adult, and I had just moved into a house that was divided into apartments. It was pretty big sized. Our space that I had moved into had 2 separated individual rooms, a kitchen, a dining room, and then a living room. And then there was an extra space just off the dining room that we had sort of converted into a bedroom. There was a handful of us living together up in this space. Now, I remember one day I had been sleeping as I had been working early mornings and was taking a nap. And I awoke to one of the roommates wandering around calling out, and I came out and asked them what they were doing. They said they thought that they had seen me pass by their doorway and assumed that I was awake, but when they didn't see anybody, started asking, calling out. I, of course, told them that I had been sleeping and had not been moving around, and kind of laughed about it. I assumed that they had just seen a shadow pass their doorway or something like that from lighting outside. Never really put much stock into it. Another point, while still living in this same place, I was in the living room area with the woman I was dating at the time and a couple others, and we were watching TV, laughing, making jokes. I think we'd been drinking a little too. And I remember off to my side, I saw a shadow appear in the dining room area and then cross just out of my vision towards one of the bedrooms, which actually happened to be her son's room. I kind of leaned forward and looked out real quick, which got everybody's attention. I told them what I'd seen, and they all acted like I was crazy. Couldn't possibly have seen what I saw. A couple days later, her son come out of his room in kind of a huff and informed us that he didn't want to play in his room anymore. We asked him why. He said, well, he made his friend angry. We said, what friend? He'd been playing all by himself, of course, so there was no other children. In fact, it was just the three of us at this moment in that apartment. He said he'd been playing with his friend, and his friend had gotten angry, and so he didn't want to play with him anymore. We again asked what friend. He said his friend was Mr. Ghost. We looked at each other pretty spooked and asked him where he got that name. He said, well, Mr. Ghost told him that he was Ghost. We didn't actually live in that apartment much longer. We had already had plans to move, so I can't say as to whether or not anything more happened, but having 3 separate incidents like that, it makes you think. Now for this next story, I need to give you a little bit of background. Now at this time, I'm fully an adult, and I was living in a townhouse. Now my father and my stepmom had moved to Alabama, and had lived there for a little while, and had just decided that they wanted to be back in our state again. Now, my father had gotten a job right away, but hadn't yet been able to find a place. So while talking with my father, he asked if I would mind if he stayed with me for a little bit until he got his own place. Now, my relationship with my father was pretty good at this time. We get along very well, and I didn't foresee any issues with this. So, of course, I said sure, and was happy to have them come stay with me. I was living in a pretty nice townhouse at the time. It was 2-story. There was 2 bedrooms in the upstairs, a kitchen, a little washer and dryer space just off the kitchen, and then the living/dining room area. And the steps going upstairs came right off the front door to go up to the 2nd floor. There was also a short, I would say maybe 4 or 5 foot hallway between the living and dining room area and the kitchen. And just off the living room, there was a closet in this hall space that was directly underneath the stairs. Now, when I had first moved into this townhouse and had lived on my own there, I never really experienced anything. But it wasn't long after my father and stepmom moved in that things began to happen. At first, it was just my stepmom noticing them. She would tell us of hearing sounds when we weren't around. Then she began to tell us about my closet door opening, and we laughed at her, gave her a hard time, teased her. We didn't really think there was anything to these stories. Neither of us had experienced anything. Now, I should say, my father, like me, is a believer in the paranormal and supernatural, but like me, he is a skeptic when he hears these stories. So, We didn't put much stock into them. That is until we started witnessing things. One day we're watching TV. I believe we may have been watching a football game. And all of a sudden, we all three heard quite a clatter in the kitchen. It sounded like somebody was rearranging my dishes in my cupboards. I got up and walked in and started opening cupboards, looking around, expecting to maybe find signs of a mouse or something like that, thinking maybe rodents had gotten in and were running around my cupboards, causing my dishes to kind of clink and clatter together. I, of course, found no evidence of rodents whatsoever, and nothing looked like it was out of place at all. It was just a mysterious, displaced sound. I think it was maybe a week or two later, we again heard the same sound. And then all three of us went in to investigate, and again, couldn't find anything. We started finding my closet door sitting open and kept assuming that either my father or my stepmom or I had just accidentally left it open or not pushed it all the way shut, so it just swung itself open slightly. That is until we were again sitting watching TV, my father and I. We have clear view from where we're sitting of the closet door. It's not even off in our peripheral. It is a clear view. We got the TV here and then the closet door right off. All of a sudden, we see the doorknob turn and the closet door swings open part way. Not fast, kind of slow, slow enough it could have been like gravity or a breeze blowing through, except that we saw the doorknob. We got up and investigated the closet door. We tried to recreate the event over and over again. No matter what we did, we could not get the closet door to behave in the exact manner we had just witnessed. After that, my father and I concluded that there must be something living in the townhouse with us, but felt like we were in no danger whatsoever, as nothing malevolent had happened. Simply some noises, a couple of objects being found in strange locations, and the door. My father is also very much a believer in if it can harm me, I can harm it. So he was not worried whatsoever. My stepmom, of course, was pretty freaked out and kept trying to convince us that we needed an exorcist or something like that. Another quick side note, my stepmother was raised Catholic. I don't believe she was a practicing Catholic at this point. My father was, I believe, Wiccan, perhaps. Um, so my stepmother would easily become frightened of these paranormal things, fearing demons or the devil. Whereas my father just assumed that if it's a spirit, it's just going to do its thing, leave us alone. He was never concerned. Um, One night, however, I came home to discover my father had beaten me home from work when he should have gotten off later than me. As it turned out, he'd gotten a frantic phone call from my stepmom at work. She was convinced someone was in the townhouse with her. She'd stayed home alone that day and had been in the bath, um, was relaxing, trying to take a bath, and to this day swears that somebody reached out and kind of gently flipped her hair. We never saw anybody. We never found any other signs of anything happening. It is worth noting that while living in that townhouse, there was a gal I was seeing at the time who would refuse to stay the night at my place unless I kept my bathroom door shut. She was convinced that at night, while we slept, shadows, more than one, would move back and forth pacing in my bathroom, and always swore that they gave her an extremely uneasy feeling. I never saw these shadows, and I never got that feeling myself, but I always kept the bathroom door shut when she stayed over, just for her sake. Again, aside from the closet door and hearing the noises of the dishes, nothing really ever happened to me particularly. And when we all ended up moving out of that townhouse, we never really experienced anything more for quite some time, at least not as a group. Now, years later, I began living in an apartment with my son, just the two of us. And not long after moving in, we started noticing some things in our apartment together. The first things we noticed were strange, kind of out of place smells. We'd randomly smell something really sweet when there was no explanation for it, like caramel or even some kind of buttery, sugary smell. And then there was a couple times we smelled something more foul. One particular time, we randomly started smelling what we could only describe as tar, but there was nothing to cause that type of odor to emanate. Another time, we evacuated because we thought we had a gas leak. We could very strongly smell gas odor. But upon inspection from the gas company, nothing was found. They couldn't even detect the smell themselves anymore. So when we went in, we smelled around and it was gone, but we had definitely smelled it very strongly. Now, the gas company's position was we had a fireplace and chimney that were not in use, and that likely we had smelled something coming in through there, or there could have been an animal that got in our walls, died, and rotted. Except that was the only one and only time we ever witnessed that particular smell. Another instance we had, my son and I were both sitting in the living room searching for a movie to watch together when all of a sudden we heard a clatter at the end of the hall towards our bedrooms. The best way I can describe this clatter was like if you took a box that had checkerboard in it and all its pieces, reached out and dropped it on the floor. Now, we didn't have a checkerboard in pieces. We didn't even have a game board in our rooms. We did have a couple game boards, but they were both in our living room on our entertainment center. My son and I walked both of our rooms, searched high and low, and could not find anything that could have made that noise. And couldn't find anything out of place for that matter. So we pretty much shrugged it off. Another instance that would happen, my son came home from school and did like a lot of kids will do, walked in and kicked off his shoes. He actually kicked them into the living room on the floor and then ran into his bedroom to put up his backpack. I can't remember if I went to the restroom or into my room to do something. And then later got up to start cooking and found his shoes in the middle of my kitchen floor. I was very perplexed and questioned him, asking, why would you put your shoes in the middle of the kitchen floor? If you're going to move them, why not put them away where they belong? He, of course, maintained and still maintains to this day that he never moved his shoes. He left them in the living room near the couch. The next instance we had would also involve something of his being moved. Again, he had come home from school, dumped his backpack and coat onto the living room couch, and then went to go to the bathroom. Now, he'd come home kind of late in the day. He'd been doing something after school. So I had gone into the kitchen to get ready to start making dinner. I was preparing dinner and everything, got it prepped, put it in the oven, and came out to the living room and got a text message from my upstairs neighbor. The text message said that somebody had left a coat on our door. I was super confused by this, wondering why would somebody come in, take a coat, and hang it on my door. So I went out and there was my son's coat, hanging on the doorknob. Now I had seen him put it on the couch. I saw him leave it on the couch and then go to the bathroom. And from there, he actually went into his bedroom. Neither of us crossed paths with the couch or his coat until I came out to the text message from my neighbor. Of course, we have no explanation for this. We never figured out how his coat managed to get from the couch to my front door without anybody moving it, and we never heard the door open. There have been other random things that we've witnessed moving in this apartment. Nothing too grand. But I'll never forget the night I got startled pretty good. I had gotten a Bluetooth speaker from work as a Christmas gift. Actually, a holiday gift is what it was, a holiday gift. Our company has a habit every year of giving out something to all of its employees on top of our yearly bonus. Some kind of memento type thing. I've gotten mugs, a couple of model trucks, and this Bluetooth speaker was one we got a particular year. Now this Bluetooth speaker has a switch on its side, which has to be flipped in order to turn it on. And I paired it with my phone as soon as I got it so that I could use it for listening to music. Now, the way my phone is set up, as soon as it detects a Bluetooth signal that it's previously paired with, it connects. There's no delay, there's no disconnect unless the signal is lost. It's an automatic connection. That part is very important to know, as well as the fact that this switch has to be flipped. Now, the day of the incident, I had not actually used my speaker all day. The day before, I had, and then had switched it off when I was done and put it up on a mantle in my living room. The day of the incident, all day long I'd been home. I was off work, and my phone had not once connected to the speaker. That night I had gone to bed and fallen asleep and was pretty well sound asleep when all of a sudden I was woken by the sound of my Bluetooth speaker. It has a particular jingle it makes when it turns on. At first, I didn't quite put the pieces of the puzzle together. It hadn't occurred to me that my Bluetooth speaker turned on. I had just woken. Now, I'd been playing music on my phone while I slept to help me sleep. And out of nowhere, loud sound just blasts in my living room. It scared me so bad that I actually grabbed my handgun and, without putting on any clothes, jumped up and ran out, room clearing my apartment, thinking somebody had broke in and was messing with my stuff, thinking I had an intruder in my home. I found nobody there, no signs anybody had came in, not the sliding door, not my front door. I had run out so fast that nobody really should have had time to escape my view. At least not without me seeing something or some sign of them. And they certainly wouldn't have had the time to close a door without me seeing the door or at least hearing the door. But I saw and heard nothing. I picked up my Bluetooth speaker and the switch was switched to on. So I shut it back off and tried to go back to sleep, but then my phone began acting up. And I was having difficulty sleeping now, having been disturbed. So I went to turn on my TV, and my smart TV started acting up. I don't know for sure that there is a particular spirit haunting my apartment. I have tried on more than one occasion to reach out and make contact to find out who or what is doing these things. And for the most part, the instances have stopped. But occasionally, we will still hear out of place sounds or have out of place smells or even discover that something has moved from where we know we left it. But it's been a while since anything that grand has happened. And folks, I think for now, that's where we're going to leave the stories. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.